Okay, it's just about 10 o'clock, everyone, so I think we'll get started, and others may be joining us along the way as we kick off here. So I just want to welcome you all to our inaugural 12-sector collaboration series today. We are going to be focusing on the school sector today and then moving through each of the sectors each month as we progress. So just welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming. And a special thank you to our guest speakers today, Steve, Kelly, and Shaylin. So we're much appreciative for them coming to share their knowledge and wisdom of the sector with us a little bit later in our presentation. So just before we start, I would just like to go through a couple of housekeeping notes, if that's okay. First, if everyone could remain on mute, just so we don't get a lot of echoing or noise in the background unless speaking, that would be helpful. Thank you so much. The other thing is there is a chat box. So of course, along the way here, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to use the chat box. And we will be providing to you after the presentation the full slide deck. So of course, feel free to jot down any questions or take any notes, but by no means should anyone feel like they need to be copying down the slides, because we will make that all available to you as well as our tools. So just a brief introduction, I'm Jen Jacobson with T-Task, and my other teammates here today on board are Mark Nickel, Lisa Mason. Lisa's going to help me moderate the event today. We have Ken Ploward, who's going to be handling our technology. And we have Shay Montemuro, who's going to be handling our chat box. So thank you to my team for backing me up here today. So with that, just a reminder that we are going to be recording today, just for in case anyone misses this. It will be available on our website in the future for those who couldn't make it with us today. So with that, we are going to kick it off. I'm going to be screen sharing most of the time, off and on. So if you have any comments, I probably won't be able to see you that well with the way Zoom is set up. So again, if you have anything, please use the chat box at any time, okay? So here we are with our 12-sector collaboration series. We're very excited to start this little mini series for everyone. And this focus today is on engaging schools. So within each of the series sectors that we go through, we have a similar framework that we'll be working from, but specific to the school sector, we're going to just walk through the school sector as it pertains to the SPF model, or the strategic prevention framework that many of us work with in prevention. Gain some knowledge of the different levels of sector involvement. Our really exciting piece of today is learning from a shared experience through our coalition speakers, talking about the school sector and their work in their communities. Identify some ways to engage with the school sector. Identify some barriers that some of us have experienced or might face as we engage with schools, and some ideas, share some ideas together on how to overcome them. And then we're going to provide you, of course, in typical T-Task form, several tools that we hope that you can take away with you and utilize in your work at the end of today. Of course, plenty of time for discussion and Q&A as we go through the process today. So I'm sure many of you on this call have worked with the strategic prevention framework before, or otherwise as we call it, the SPF, but we do have many people who are on today who don't necessarily engage with it as much as some of us do. So just a quick overview of what the SPF is. So it's really a prevention approach, a comprehensive approach to understanding and addressing substance misuse and related behavioral issues facing our states and our community. And just really quickly, I'm not going to read through all of these slides all of the time, but just a brief overview of them, because you will have this at your leisure to go through. But really, it's 5 steps and 2 principles. One is the first step is the assessment step, where we're kind of identifying those local prevention needs based on the data. Building capacity with local resources and readiness to address those needs. Coming up with a plan, figuring out what work, how we're going to address our needs, and putting together a comprehensive approach to addressing those needs. Implementation is where we're really delivering those evidence-based programs and practices, putting our plans into action, and then an evaluation phase at the end, where we're examining, did we move the needle? How did it work out? What were our outcomes of everything that we did, and reevaluating where we go from there. Undergirding all of those steps along the way are 2 principles known as cultural competence and sustainability. The cultural competence is really when we have the ability of an individual or an organization to understand and interact effectively with people who have different values, lifestyles, cultures, traditions, understanding that, incorporating that into our work. And then sustainability is really a long-term process of making sure that what we're doing is sustainable in the long run. So getting right to the school sector. So it's really defined, technically speaking, as representatives of public and private school systems with influence in school policies, procedures, and that includes our local universities and colleges. As we all know, and I'm sure that our schools in each of our communities are so near and dear to our hearts, to so many, but they also play such a critical role in the prevention work that we do. And one of the main ways they do that is for many of us who work with youth in our communities, they do provide access to our coalition target population, shall we say, technically speaking. But just some examples of representatives from the school sector that many of us have worked with or that you can reach out to are our superintendent and school administrators, our school counselors and psychologists, our health teachers and regular teachers, general education teachers, our health curriculum coordinators and incorporating prevention work into that health curriculum, our school nurses, advisors to student prevention groups. So if you have groups such as MAD or SAD in your community, those advisors are really helpful people I've learned to have on our coalitions. And of course, our parents, our PTA representatives, and our PTO representatives. So those are just some of the more common people from the school sector that we often see collaborating with our coalitions in the prevention work. So just going to quickly go through each of those steps. Not going to read them again in full, but just so you have this at your leisure to go through in deeper. But the needs assessment is really when we're collecting data, that first step to identify our priority substances and associated risk factors in each of our communities. And that can look different in each community. And then determining what evidenced strategies that we're going to implement to prevent and reduce that substance misuse. And of course, we all use various tools for this purpose, and that's looking at our school discipline data, climate reports, student surveys, parent surveys, holding those focus groups, informational meetings, and really reaching out to our youth groups and ensuring that they're a part of that process along the way as well. And then from once we have all of that data, we decide what programs and activities we're going to use to address all of those risk factors and strengthen the work in our community. So again, capacity is really focusing on identifying what resources we have, our human resources, our fiscal resources, and making sure that we're ready to engage in that work. So just how the school sector itself can help build coalitions, build capacity, and that's reaching out to our superintendent and maybe having him or her serve in a leadership role on the coalition, and really just being a voice and advocating for the coalition's work with the Board of Ed and ensuring support for prevention activities at the school level. Also having just relevant school personnel attend coalitions meetings and take that information, that messaging, report back to their peers in their schools, making sure we have an inventory of what schools are already doing in their schools and what else we can be doing to fill the gaps and help them. And lastly, of course, PTA representatives, our parents are so critically important as well in understanding the work of the coalition, bringing back the messaging or activities and events back to their PTA so that people have just one other means of understanding what's going to be going on in the community that they can volunteer with or help with. After capacity, we kind of move into that planning phase, and we've done our needs assessment. And that's really where we create a plan to identify our strategies and the activities we're going to engage in and to address those needs that we identified in the first two steps. So that's coming up with evidence-based strategies that we know are effective in reducing substance misuse amongst youth and increasing awareness of the issues in our community. Usually here's where we're identifying some measurable goals and our objectives and the strategies that are ongoing that reinforce each other, and then making a plan to evaluate that plan based on the measurement of effectiveness and whether or not we met our goals. And at this point, it's always kind of a little tip here to make sure that we're reaching out to different stakeholder groups, different demographics, different sectors along the way so that everyone is involved in the planning stage. We have consensus and there's an agreement on how we're going to address the issues in our community. implementation. So when I was a coordinator, this was kind of my favorite part of our job, and events when we're really out there in our community, or now on Zoom, virtually implementing those plans and really engaging in that work on a grassroots level. We just put in some tips here on implementation that we thought might be helpful for some people, and just some ideas from our experience along the way, such as alternating your days, nights, and weekend events, just allowing for that broader community attendance so they can be able to attend. Ensuring that all sectors and members are aware of your events with a strong communication strategy and how we're getting the word out there, email and social media, school e-blasts, and if you have a good partnership with your town even, using that town distribution access is really helpful. And then of course, for those of us who know we have to do reporting on a regular basis, it's just keeping track of all of that attendance and the demographics. And then evaluation is where we go back to collecting more data in order to see where we've been able to make that impact, and we'll be able to, share all of your successes and victories. And it's really just referring back to the step one, and what did we identify, what that we were going to do, did we do it, and were we able to move the needle? It's also a great part of the SPF where you can not only evaluate whether you were successful in moving those needles on your goals, but also to take stock of where were we a little bit short, and where did we need to further focus some of our resources and attention along the way. And I know that also over time, some emerging trends can come up, and we can kind of take stock of those, and something that may not have been present a couple of years ago may be present now. So I know vaping is something that kind of came along the way for many of us in midstream, and it was something that we needed to kind of not pivot all of our attention to, but definitely address. So that would be an example of that. Oh, don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. Sorry, tech glitch. Oh, sorry.
While we're waiting for this tech glitch, Lisa, maybe you could, we have a question in the chat box from Kathy. What are school climate reports, and what information does this report contain? And do every schools have this? Lisa, would you answer that question?
Actually, Jen might be a better person to answer it. I can give a general answer. Do you want to address that, Jennifer?
So every so often, it's not uncommon for schools to do a school climate survey. I wouldn't say necessarily that all districts do it on an annual basis, but really looking at school climate around things like safety. Are they feeling safe, bullying, just the facilities in general? So these should be available on district websites. I know that in Fairfield, we have ours up there. They're definitely not done every year, but periodically, every few years. And they do provide a good source of data on student and parent and staff feedback on school climate, as they usually contain input from all of those different sectors. So it's definitely something we could follow up with you on and provide some technical assistance on, and help you find out if you do have those. But generally, they should be posted somewhere on the school website. And if not, your school administrator or superintendent would definitely know the last time that that was done, and if it's available, where you might be able to access that. Is that helpful? Okay, moving on. So just quickly on sustainability and cultural competency, those two principles that undergird the SPF model. I'm not going to read this technical definition as I did so in the beginning, but just wanted to make sure we had this slide in there for those who might not be with us today, and for you to have later on as well. Digging deep into cultural competency by considering culture at each step of the SPF. We help to ensure that members of diverse populations in our communities can actively participate in and benefit from our prevention practices. And just some tips on this chart in here for you as you go through it is just taking stock of doing deeper dives into our data to look for hidden or underserved populations. Have our demographics changed recently in our community? Are they continuing to change? Ensuring that we're holding focus groups with different stakeholders from different cultures and different student groups as well. And are we making our materials available in a culturally relevant way? So one of the tools we're going to provide for you to go in depth at your leisure on is an opportunities to integrate cultural competency across the SPF chart, which will be a tool that you can take away and dig into that deeper on your own. Similar with sustainability, it's just the capacity of a community to produce and maintain positive prevention outcomes over time. So that's really that long-term view, building that in within each step, working towards our partners, owning our prevention initiatives, what training and professional development are we offering to ensure that, the technical assistance and resources, identifying new resources or additional resources we might need in order to sustain the work over time. And again, we're going to provide for you a chart for that at the end as a tool that you can have. So just a quick check-in right now as we finish this part of it. If there was any questions on any of those steps or anything we could clarify at this time, and just check in with Shay and see if there's any question in our chat box. So feel free to just unmute if you do have a question or have any comments on that at this time. Nothing, Shay? No? Okay.
Not right now. Just the only question came from Kathy, so we're good for right now.
All right, thank you. Okay. All right, now we are going to move on to the fun part. And when we were thinking about creating this series, we thought the most beneficial part of this would really be hearing from the people from within Connecticut and from within our communities as they've engaged with each of these sectors. And so today we're just so happy to have Steve, Kelly, and Shaylin with us today. Steve is a retired school counselor and Southington Steps Advisory Board member. And Kelly Leopard is the Southington Steps Coalition Coordinator. So they're going to start first and walk you through what they've been doing in Southington with the school sector. And then after that, we'll have Shaylin go on to address you with her part of this. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to let Kelly and Steve take over from here. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for coming today.
Start by taking ourselves off mute. So hi everyone, my name is Kelly Lepard. I am the prevention coordinator for the town of Southington. I've been the coordinator of our coalition since 2008. And just a little background, we have had 10 years of drug-free communities grant funding, and then we have fully sustained our coalition with 2 full-time staff members since. So we've kind of seen the full circle of the prevention field. So I love working with the education sector. So one of the reasons is because Steve Nyrick has become one of my best friends, and his enthusiasm and passion for our Asset Building Classrooms initiative is just top notch. So back when we first started with our coalition, we had baseline data, right? Just like all other coalitions. We chose the Search Institute model. That's the survey we had used at the time, and we have used that since. So we've just in our survey now for the 6th time, we do it every 2 years. And we were showing high levels of risk-taking behaviors. Not so low levels of developmental assets, but levels enough that we needed to build assets with intention. We know that kids spend the majority of their time at school and at home. So we wanted to find a way to build assets with kids in our education sector with intention and make prevention a priority throughout all of our schools. So Search Institute had a training that they push out. I know they're doing it virtually. So we did this years ago. I asked 2 people from our school sector, Steve Nyrick. We were told then that if you want something done right, get Steve Nyrick involved. So we did, and then we got a school psychologist to come on. And after the training, we said, this is something that we really need to do. We need to make it our own. And so Asset Building Classrooms came to fruition. So we definitely made this up as we went along, all research-based, but it's been trial by error, and we are in such a great place. But I'm going to turn it over to Steve now, and he's going to give you a run through of what our initiative's all about and how we have changed what we've done because of the pandemic, and we have turned it into a virtual avatar training. So I'm going to turn my computer back.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Great introduction as to how we got where we are today. Like Kelly has said, I'm a recently retired school counselor, middle school counselor. I've worked in the Southington school system for 41 years, and it was about 13 years ago that Kelly, Jeff Duquette, the school psychologist, and myself were asked to go to a 2-day workshop to learn about the Search Institute's Developmental Asset Program. I got to tell you, I had no idea why I was chosen. However, once we got involved with the activities that were happening during the day, I understood better that it was the educational piece that both Jeff, Kelly, and myself would be trying to develop from scratch. So being there right at the beginning was very exciting to see where it would progress to today. So if I get too excited, it's not I'm patting myself on the back or us, it's because of what we're doing and the impact that we're having, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So Kelly, Jeff, and myself, we love the idea of using the Search Institute's 40 Developmental Asset Program and to be part of the Southington community. Before I tell you how we got started, let me show you our virtual training intro that we have put together, and it will give you an idea of how students are trained now. We used to do it in person. We had about 150, 160 students and teachers, staff members that would come to the training to see what was going on currently, what they could be doing in the future, and how they were going to be able to do that at each of their schools. At each of their schools, they all had different ways of implementing the asset of the month. And we used to do it, we had 10 months, so we had 10 assets of the 40 that we identified that we thought we would push out during the school year. A little bit too much. So we scaled it back down to 5 assets. There's my hand, 5, so I know. 5 assets that we would do during the school year, so it would be 1 asset for 2 months. However, it's good to give you a little bit of background as to the training that we are going to be doing virtually because of the pandemic that we're currently involved in. Here we go.
Hello and welcome. We are so glad you could join us for Southington's virtual asset building classroom training. Throughout this training, you will learn skills to make a positive difference with other students at your school and in the Southington community. These skills will allow you to build strong relationships and make healthy decisions through a variety of monthly activities. Before we begin, here's some background information on our community's prevention coalition called STEPS, Southington's town-wide effort to promote success. Back in 2007, our community was seeing an increase in risk-taking behaviors among our youth. Risk-taking behaviors such as drug and alcohol use and even youth suicides. A small group of community leaders representing all sectors such as law enforcement, education, town government, youth-serving organizations, parents, and more came together in an attempt to create a safety net for youth. This safety net would protect them by building strong relationships and help to decrease risk factors they could be exposed to on a daily basis. This small group chose the Search Institute model to build that safety net. The Search Institute identified 40 positive supports and strengths that young people need to succeed. Half of the assets focus on the relationships and opportunities they need in their families, schools, and communities called external assets. The remaining assets focus on the social emotional strengths, values, and commitments that are nurtured within young people called internal assets. Now that a model was chosen specifically for our community, the question was, where do we start? Where do kids spend the majority of their time? That's right, school. And that's where Asset Building Classrooms began. Asset Building Classrooms is a partnership between the Southington Public School District and the Southington community to help kids succeed with intention. There are staff champions at each of our 12 schools, along with an amazing team of students such as yourself. You will promote the asset of the month at your school to help build a strong school community. You'll learn more about the asset of the month in part 3 of this training. Almost 15 years later, STEPS is now one of the leading prevention coalitions in the state of Connecticut, thanks to you. We continue to strive to make prevention a priority through asset building and in addition through education, limiting access and policy change for underage drinking, tobacco, vaping, marijuana, and prescription drug prevention. Although the student data that we have collected throughout the years show our efforts are working, there is much more that needs to be done. That's why you're here to join our team and keep the momentum going. The message is simple. Let's work together to make a positive difference at school and in the community. Now let's get started. Part 1 covers an introduction to the developmental assets. Part 2 is the power of assets and why they are so important. And Part 3 will talk about the assets of the month and how you can build them right at your school. Click Part 1 to begin.
Ready?
It's still sharing the screen. This is what they see.
Okay. So over, you can see that that's our intro to the virtual training that each champion at the school will be viewing. So there's a teacher or a staff member that's a champion at each of the schools. They are putting together their teams as we talk now or already have. They will view our virtual training and become ready to promote those assets of the month at their school. What's really important about the educational sector, because I'm part of that, I think it's the basis on which the success of students not being involved in as much risky behavior as they are doing is through the schools, through role models, through the activities that are happening at their school on a regular basis. The students know about STEPS as the overall initiative that takes in all the sectors. However, it becomes personal when they are involved at their school in the educational sector, and I think it's very, very impactful because parents a lot and very often will say, "What did you do at school today? What activities are you involved in?" With virtual, just to give you an example, I was at DePaulo Middle School and I'm still in contact with the champion at that school. And she put out the invitation for students to join the ABC, Asset Building Classroom Club, if you want to call that. And over 170 students are getting involved in that. And why is that? Because a lot of the other clubs that meet after school cannot meet at all because it takes more, you have to be in person to do that, whether it's the robotics club, the computer club. There are different things that you want to be there right in person. So parents are looking for something. Parents know about the initiative in town and they want their students, their children involved in those kind of activities. How do you get started? We got started right at the beginning once we went to the training with the Search Institute by going to the superintendent. And why did we go to the superintendent? Because it was going to be him promoting that this would be an initiative that he wanted in all the schools, starting in the elementary, K grades, kindergarten, all the way up to the high school level. If it wasn't for his support at the beginning, I'm not sure how far asset building classrooms would have gotten, but the principals have the idea that they need to implement that program or get a staff member on board. And that was myself at my school and a group of other students, a group of other teachers and staff members at their schools. So I believe that that's why it has been so successful. I will tell you that 10 years is a long time for any initiative to keep on going. But it's not only at the schools, it's within the community sector also, the business, the religious. All those sectors are very important. So it's not just at the school. We've had character counts that have been great for the initial first 3 years and then it goes away. There's been other programs, but this program has gotten me the most excited and the most buy-in because it takes in the whole community, and we meet on a regular basis with those champions to get an idea about what they're doing individually at their school and how they're doing it with their students at their school. Each school is a little bit different. However, the assets that we're promoting remain the same, and the asset that we have for September and October is Caring School Climate. It could be as simple as greeting the students at your classroom door if they're coming in, or greeting them when they're at home, know them by name, know a little bit more about them than just their name, what they enjoy doing, what their interests are. That's very, very important. For the month of November, December, we're going to be promoting self-esteem. January and February, I saw that Jennifer had talked about cultural competence. We'll be talking about that. Very, very important aspect of getting everybody involved, no matter what their race or ethnicity is at their school, and that's very, very important. Interpersonal competence is in March and April, and then we finish up May and June with integrity. And we've done these assets for the past 2 years so we can get a good idea about what each school can be doing at their school. So it's not overwhelming. A lot of the activities and involvement are things they've already are doing at their school, but they tailor it to their school. I see Kelly has the emotional intelligence initiative that's in the school system. And what we've done is we've merged asset building classroom with emotional intelligence. So one is not separate from the other. They're two different ideas, but we're building on both of those initiatives. So one of the activities that we did for Caring School Climate was the staff was brought into the library, and on the walls throughout the library was listed every student's name. Each staff got a marker, and they were to check off if they knew something about that particular student, more than just their name. Maybe they knew an interest, a hobby that they had, or maybe the student had shared a personal experience with that teacher. They knew something more than just the name. And each staff member had a marker, went around the library to check off if they knew anything about that student. And it was very interesting to find out that some students the teachers knew and made connections with. There were a lot of checks there, and there were some students that didn't have any. And those are the students that we really need to identify and reach out to, because we don't want students to be just a name. We want to know more about them and more engaged in the school experience. Quite a great eye opener and a great asset building classroom activity, because the more assets students have, the more success they will have in life and more connections that they have. Kelly's helping me out, and be less likely to be involved in risky behavior. There are not only activities that are done at the school level, but there are community, the whole school system is involved in activities. October 21st, maybe some of you know this, is Unity Day. And at our school, you're asked to wear orange, be united, and a lot of people, they don't have to have the t-shirt, but on the back at DePaulo is DPAD, don't put anybody down. So the color orange is not going to make people less, bully less. However, it's strength and unity. Most people are wearing orange that day, and it gives a sense of unity that you can stand together up against somebody that is bullying somebody else. Another activity that we do later in April is Good Deeds Day. and you can go to the website there and doing good. And it's just another day that the whole school will know that that day will be activities about. Kelly, thank you for doing something very, very nice with other people. Get the superintendent on board, get your champions at each school to promote the assets, and I could talk for about an hour about all the
I
good
think that
things that you're doing.
we have a couple questions, I think, Shay. We have a couple questions in the chat box, I think, that popped up that might be helpful. Do you want to read those out, Shay?
Yes, we do. So from Kirsten, she asks that she thinks the resource is great and will it be available to watch anywhere, because she'd love to share with her coalition.
So that is only the intro. We're working on the other parts as we're speaking. So it's not available yet. However, this website that is here, Kelly will give a link for the STEPS ABC champion site. And on that site, we will have the whole video coming up probably by early November.
Great.
All right. Elizabeth has a couple of questions. Firstly, I'm sorry if I'm not getting everybody's pronouns right or anything like that. I'm just gonna go by names. Are the asset building classrooms at the high school level, and is every classroom an asset classroom, or is this an after school activity, such as the one at DePaulo Middle?
So I'm going to tell you the most success is at the asset building classroom is at the elementary level, because it's school-wide. The students and the teachers are enthusiastic about promoting what's going on. Oh, and they've also divided, instead of like first grade and second grade will promote the asset of the month in September and October, and then second and third will promote the next asset. So it gets buy-in at some point throughout the year on the elementary level by dividing it up. At the middle school level, there are more activities. It's a group or a club that will put it together and promote those activities, whether it's a toy drive. They're all things that are happening at your school. You don't have to reinvent anything. So that's how that works. High school, more challenging. There is, they've labeled it the think tank up there. There's probably around 25 students that are involved doing activities and to promote the asset of the month. However, the buy-in up at the high school, again, it has to come from the principal down. We have a new principal, and he, I believe we've talked to him personally, has the buy-in, and he's promoting things on a daily basis through emails to the teachers, talking about what's going on and what he would like to see as a possibility in each classroom. So each level's a little bit different. Each school handles it a little bit different. However, the idea about what's going on is throughout the school system. So once they're getting up to the high school, they've heard about what's happening, ABC steps on the elementary and middle school level before they get to the high school. I hope that answered your question.
Awesome. The next question Elizabeth asked, when the asset building classrooms were put into place, did implementation of lessons happen in all content areas or only specific classrooms? I am curious what content area the instructional time was pulled from.
I don't believe that it wasn't a content area that they needed to do it in.
Like, for example, if they want the ID take home assignments.
There could be assignments that could be taken home. Each teacher was doing it a little bit different. There might be a morning announcement, so everybody is hearing about what a Caring School Climate is doing, so they heard it that way, and then teachers themselves can promote it within their classroom the way they wanted to, but it wasn't specific that you had to do a specific activity, only if you wanted to.
So I'm hearing Steve and Kelly, just that rather than it being a block of time where this is being done, it's more of an embedded item.
Your voice is...
Right, it's more of an embedded issue.
Correct. That is right. It was not a block of time taken out of the school day. However, I think there is time during the day at each of the schools where they might do that. The principal might say, well, they might have a town hall. So a town hall meeting. So at the town hall meeting, the whole school's there. And there are student representatives in grade 5 that are talking about Caring School Climate, what they've done, and other grades might in fact share out. Lisa?
Hi, I just wanted to say to clarify for Elizabeth, it's really more of a school climate, positive peer, staff, kid relationships than a specific like lesson. Staff may introduce the asset of the month and talk about it, but it's not like your health curriculum kind of thing. And health teachers might make connections, and teachers, when they're teaching other content, might make connections, but it's not really like a classroom curriculum. It's more getting the school family together, invested.
Very well put. What happened is that teachers did not want to take their precious time, we'll say it's math, their precious time to do something related to that. However, what we did was during sustained silent reading after lunch, there might be a video that we would like all the students to watch during that 10 minutes and then have a discussion afterwards. So we got inventive doing it that way, but not taking away from classroom time because that was their time and they had to get their curriculum in. That was a good question.
So just want to make sure we get time to get to Shaylin today too as well. So if Kelly and Steve, you don't mind when I send out the information from today's series, that if we could include your website and anything you might want us to send out on your behalf so everyone can have it readily available to them to go back and review it on their own or reach out to you in the future. Would that be okay?
Perfect.
Sure. And if I could just say one more thing. So we've been working with Nina Chanana. I'm not sure which local evaluators you work with. Nina is so wonderful, but just to see the changes in our data, so bringing it back to the strategic prevention framework and the evaluation piece, and just to show how our numbers are moving. It's really remarkable. And I think it's because we are consistent with this, but it's really making a difference for our community, and just seeing the difference gets people more involved and more excited, knowing that the small little things that they do is contributing to the bigger picture. So that is it. But we'll, yes, I'll put our website in the chat box, and then we will get you the link to once our training's all up and running, if anyone is interested in checking it out. So
Thank you. Do you guys want to stop screen share?
that would be helpful, huh?
It's okay. Okay, thank you so much. That was great. Just a lot to appreciate that you've been able to achieve there, and I'm sure really helpful for those who have also looked at those assets in those surveys and can really take away on how you translate all of that data into action to really even further your impact in the community. So thank you so much for sharing. And I just want to introduce Shaylin. Hi, Shaylin.
Hi.
Hi, we're going to move on to Shaylin and let her take over from here as well for our second speaker today.
All right. So my name is Shaylin Sheldon, and I am the Director of Development and Marketing at the McCall Center for Behavioral Health. However, before taking on this position, I was the Coalition Coordinator for the Northwest Corner Prevention Network. That network covers a bunch of small towns in Northwest Connecticut, so Sharon, Cornwall, North Canaan, Kent, Salisbury, and I'm probably forgetting someone. Oh, Falls Village. I know I was forgetting one. So that coalition actually is privately funded and has been for about the past 5 years. However, we still stick with the strategic prevention framework, and it's worked out really well for us. One of our very first initiatives was to bring the BOTBIN program into the school district. One of the biggest pieces, and Steve kind of hit on this too, was the enthusiasm. I love the BOTBIN program. I have researched it. I am actually a trainer of the trainers in it. And so we really jumped into this program with both feet. And our enthusiasm was almost contagious. and other people, our school administrators, our school teachers and counselors were all in. Not initially, but they became all in kind of with our enthusiasm. So one of our first steps was getting the superintendent on board. And that was probably one of the biggest hurdles we had. They were sort of in transition between superintendents, but we were able to get the superintendent to see the value of the program. Again, having an evidence-based program makes a huge difference. You can come to them with that data. The superintendent is also a big part of our coalition, so it was great to have buy-in of, here's what we have. We had been using the developmental asset survey for a few years before the coalition brought in with that. So we were also able to use that data and say, okay, here's what we know about our kids right now. Here's where they're struggling. Here's where they have some really strengths. Being in the Northwest corner, it's really, really, really rural. There's not a lot of after-school activities. There's not a lot of things happening, but there are also some cultural norms that we were really fighting against. So bringing in this program was exciting. We were able to, with the funding that we had, we were able to actually work with the Housatonic Youth Service Bureau and have one of our employees, our full-time coalition coordinator, which at the time was myself, and also one of the Housatonic Youth Service Bureau, one of their clinicians. We were able to go in and teach the program in the schools ourselves. So we brought it to the schools as, okay, so it's not going to cost you any money. We're going to come in and we're going to present this in your classrooms. Just a side note, we started at the middle school level with this. We really felt like that was a good starting point. So all the middle schools are incorporated in the elementary schools. So we had quite a few schools to go to, which is why we kind of divided and conquered. We also found that some of the people who were currently doing some health curriculum didn't want to stop teaching their students. And so 2 of the schools actually opted to start the program themselves. So they were trained and they started implementing the programs in their schools. And then the 2 of us that were left went to the remaining schools. One of the really nice things about the BOTVIN program is that it is laid out. It's curriculum based. Every week is a lesson. All the lessons are subsequent, so they build off from each other. They were lessons that people were surprised. So there's actually only 2 or 3 lessons that talk about drugs and alcohol. The others are those assets. So it's self-image, it's making good decisions, it's goal setting, it's all of those things we know kids need to have in order to be successful and build those assets throughout their life. It was funny to me to see a lot of people when we did the self-image class, the kids were like, oh, it's what other people think of me. I was like, oh, we have a lot to learn. So we would go through all these lessons and really work with the kids. And the kids picked up on our enthusiasm. And it's funny, we would start to hear them in the hallways, sort of trying out their new assertive skills. Most of them didn't really know what assertiveness meant. And so when we let them, we do something called, instead of role playing, which would indicate acting, we do behavior rehearsals. And behavior rehearsals is you teach them a skill or a behavior, and then you let them practice that. So you're not acting, you're really practicing. And there's a huge distinction there. And so when I would let some children practice being assertive towards their teachers, they were frozen when we first put them in there. And they're like, I can't tell her that she messed up on a grade. That's not okay. And so you would, show them how it works, and they would sort of repeat and put in their own spin. And so then I would find them in the hallways trying to try out their assertive skills on their friends. So it was really fun to see, and it would encourage us to continue on. So we do with BOTVIN, there's pre and post tests. So we have a really good sense after the beginning and the end of each program, which generally it can be between, depending on the levels, it ranges between 10 lessons to 17 lessons. So a couple into each level are optional. And then some of them, as time goes, there's fewer lessons because they've already gotten it. And the Botfin Life Skills program doesn't necessarily repeat levels. They build on those skills that we've already taught them. So we would do a pre-test before we even started the program, and then a post-test at the end. The nice thing with this, we're about 5 years in, so we were able to put together some aggregate data. And we learned, because I am a data nut, and I think it's just fantastic, that anti-drinking attitudes and behaviors increased over 60% in a 3-year for Region 1 students who received the Botfin Life Skills between 6th and 8th grade. So their attitudes about drinking or not drinking increased a whopping 60%, which is a huge number when you're looking at it. These kids had Botfin level 1 for middle school in 6th grade, level 2 in 7th grade, and level 3 in 8th grade. So that's the ideal. That's what we want to see, is them having all 3 sort of levels. And this really shows that those levels were working. Another fun statistic that we found was their drug refusal skills increased an average of 41% over those same 3 years. So they came in 6th grade, some of them weren't even aware of what some of the things were, obviously, so some of the increase there. So we were excited to see that. We also look at, was talking about assertive skills. Their assertive skills during that same period increased an average of 21%. And then we teach them about relaxation. And so their relaxation skills increased about 13% over that same time period. So we were really encouraged to see, you know, each year after we do pre and post tests, we can see a little bit of a difference, but when you start to put it all together and across the region and over a 3-year time span, you start to see a major difference throughout the school district. The coalition itself really does work well with the school district. We have school psychologists on our coalition. We have the superintendent. We have input from the principals, school nurses, you name it, and they're very much a part of it, and they believe in what we're doing. Having that school buy-in makes all the difference. Also, making sure that parents know what you're doing. A lot of parents were concerned at the onset, more so than we thought they would, and they were afraid of what we were teaching their children. And so really being transparent with them, letting them look at the curriculum, letting them look at the pre and post test, because that was another concern, was what are we asking their children? Similar concerns that we get when we're implementing the Search Institute questionnaire is sort of, what are you asking? So that played a big part in it. But overall, it's been probably our most successful program throughout the community. We've actually expanded it within McCall, and we've put it, we've been able to move it into other regions at this point. So we started with Region 1, but with the success of that, we've started to implement it in Region 7. We have it now in the Gilbert School in Winstead, and then this year we just had the Exploration School in Winstead sign on as well. So we are seeing it kind of take off and grow a little bit bigger each year, and we're excited. But the enthusiasm of the people who are teaching this program really makes all the difference, because when the instructors are enthusiastic about it, those kids pick up on that enthusiasm and really enjoy the program. I think that's all I have.
I'd just like to add in a couple of things. Botfin's life skills curriculum. Thank you, Shaylin, first. Thank you. I appreciated learning about what you're doing up in the Northwest corner. I just want to make sure people are aware that Botfin's life skills curriculum has been around since the 80s. And it's timeless in the sense I was trained by McCall back in the late 80s. And it's a timeless curriculum in that there's not too many things from the 80s that's still going on today. So what they've done is they've updated it, they've evaluated it. So it's a highly respected prevention curriculum. So that's number one. Number two, the way it's designed is you teach it, say in grade 6, and then there's an extra booster session set in 7th grade and 8th grade. So the idea is that it isn't a one-shot curriculum, that it's reinforced over time. And that teacher training is critical, so that they get comfortable. And I think one of the things you're doing by collecting the pre and post data and looking at your surveys is really important, Shaylin, for sustainability reasons, to let people know the value of it and let the teachers who are teaching it. I had one quick question. Do they teach this during like health, or do they set aside time like during advisee or developmental guidance? When do they teach this?
So each school is different. One of the schools, I think it's Kent Center School, actually let us rotate throughout a core class. So they let us teach it in math class 1 week, science class the next week, health class the following week. And so they staggered it throughout. It's also best if it's taught once or twice per week and consecutively. So we've seen people try and spread it out every other week. We can make that work, but it's not ideal. Once a month does not work well. They've really, because you're building on each lesson, you really want to make it consistent. Some schools just do it in health class. I have a handful, actually the majority of the people who are administering this on their own are health teachers. And I actually find that works well. They have sort of a fun personality to begin with. One of the nice things about Botman is you can make it your own and still have it be valid. So that program you can bring in, somebody was talking about how vaping sort of popped in the middle of all this and it became a bigger thing. And so you can actually bring in some pieces. And there's a checklist that says, okay, are you sticking with validity? And you can check some boxes. And if it falls within that, you're welcome to bring that in and make it your own. And that's the facilitators that have had the greatest success, is the people who really make it their own. So that makes a big difference. So it depends. You can even do it as an after-school program if you wanted to. We've seen it done that way as well. But in Region 1, they have made it a priority, and so they have fit it into their daily activities.
Shaylin, how long is each lesson?
So ideally, if we could have an hour, but we can fit it into a 45-minute block. You kind of lose out on a few of the fun activities. There's some great things like a spider web where you toss around a ball of yarn and then you actually use the web that's been created as another lesson on top of the lesson you were teaching. They really have some fun ways to get the kids involved, but still not crazy either, and really kind of get them to get the lessons that you're trying to put out there.
Awesome. So Shaylin, Dina asked, is there a cost connected to this program?
There is. So the books themselves, there are training books that are student guides. To cut down costs, we actually purchased one book for each classroom and then purchased the little composition notebooks that are like, 30 cents when school starts. So we gave each child a composition notebook to write down their homework, things like that, because there's homework lessons in here. That way we weren't buying new books every year. There's also a cost to the teacher manual. Again, we try and only buy a handful of those. And then there's a cost to the training itself, to train whoever is facilitating that program.
Any other questions, Shay?
No, we're good for right now.
Okay. I just wanted to open the floor at this point. Thank you so much, Shaylin, for that presentation and telling us about that program that you're implementing. Sounds like it's been very responsive to what's happening locally and can be adapted to meet the needs of the population that you have before you. So that's, I agree, it's really important to be able to use that data and to focus your programming on what the immediate needs are and the long-term needs of the population. But at this point, I just wanted, if anyone also just, want to engage everyone else on the call today. So if there is anything with the school sector that you'd like to highlight in your area, I'm happy to open the floor. If anyone would like to share, and if not, we can move on with the rest of our presentation. But does anyone want to share anything? Or maybe Lisa has another area that she might meant to mention. So no, okay. We will keep going on. So now we're going to move into the next piece of today's learning community, and that's going to start to talk about some of that engagement and involvement with the school sector, barriers to that, and hopefully we've already heard from Steve a little bit, initiate some concepts that were a challenge in engaging the school sector. So hopefully this segment will allow for us to have a bit of a discussion around engagement and barriers to engagement in our communities. So I'm going to go back to screen sharing. So this is kind of a common model that we see, whether in coalition work or just really in any organization work that's looking to move towards collaboration. It's the sector levels of involvement, and I'm not going to read all this on this slide again, but really we see 5 levels of involvement, and that's no involvement, networking, cooperation, coordination, and collaboration. And we know that programs or coalitions are most successful when we're really collaborating towards mutual goals together with a broad range of stakeholders and sectors. So this really goes through, no involvement is when stakeholders and groups just really aren't working together at all. Networking is maybe you kind of talk to each other about what each other is doing, communicate with each other about existing programs or activities, but really are operating separately still. Cooperation is kind of the middle step where you're starting to work together a little bit. Maybe you're sharing each other's information, promoting each other's activities. Maybe you're kind of co-sponsoring a training or event together. And then coordination is when you really are starting to build that level of involvement together, and you're serving together on event planning committees, you're serving together on community boards, you're implementing these programs together, really partnering on event. And then collaboration is really when you go from beginning to end, where stakeholders are really working together to work and partner together on shared objectives, shared goals, have consensus around the programs and activities that are working towards that. You're pooling your resources, your fiscal resources, your human resources, and really have a comprehensive plan working together to address the issues that's in your community or within your organization. So at this point, we're going to ask our first poll of the day. And as you think about your community, your coalition, or your organization that you're here with today, what level of involvement would you place the school sector in your prevention work on this continuum of no involvement to collaboration? And I'm just going to pull up that poll. It's a single choice poll. Hopefully everyone can see that. If you nod your heads, if you can see it. Great, thanks. Couple more seconds to answer. All right. These were our results. Can everyone see the results? Yes? Can you see them? Thanks, Lisa. So let's see. We've got about 8% in the networking. Good news is we don't have anyone in the no involvement, so that's good. 30% are saying that they're in the cooperation level, 15% in coordination, and 30% are in collaboration. Great, that is good to know. Now we're going to talk about how we can help change some of those numbers, if you'd like to. Sorry, you have to switch between screens when you do the polls. Okay, so now what we really wanted to talk about today is first, what are some of those barriers to engagement that some of us has personally experienced in our work or know that are out there or have felt as they've tried to engage with the school sector. So we know that some of the more common barriers to engagement would be some competition or turf issues where there might be two different groups that are competing to do the same thing, some challenged history between agencies in the community. Maybe there's a dominance by professionals within the coalition or in the organization rather than that having some balance of grassroots efforts there, ability of the members to just actively participate. We know, since we moved to COVID, that has been a challenge, that people have become so busy, especially in the school sector, addressing the needs of their community around that, and have been maybe a little bit less available to participate. Just poor links or communication, some minimal organizational capacity, just enough resources to engage the sector, enough people. Funding is sometimes a barrier to engagement, too much or too little, and creating some sustaining leadership within the group. So just making sure we have a strong leadership and that sustains over time as things and people change over. So with that, I'm going to do our second poll. And the question really is, what are some of the common barriers to engagement with the school sector that you have experienced? And then we're going to open the floor a little bit and talk about that. And I'll give you a little bit of time to go through this because I know they're a little bit longer. So if you could just think about that question, and you can choose more than one. This is a multiple choice question. Are you guys seeing the poll? Thanks, Terry, I can see you. Okay. The results are coming in. All right, is everyone done? I'm going to launch the results. Oop. Are you seeing the wrong one? Oh no, can you guys see the results? Sorry, everyone's so quiet. All right, so let's see. Our number one barrier looks like availability of members of the sectors to actively participate. 75% there. Creating and sustaining leadership within the group, 56%. Some challenged history, some minimal organizational capacity. Seems like funding isn't really a large barrier here, 6% or so, or poor links. So we know that we have some access, so that's good news. All right, so I'd like to have a little bit of a conversation about that. So would anyone mind coming on and talking about maybe just what they're seeing in their community about a drop in members from the school sector that are available to participate at this time, or just leadership issues you might be facing? If you just want to unmute yourself and feel free to share. Anyone? Lisa, you're on mute, honey.
Can you put the poll back results, or did we lose it?
No, I have it. Hold on. Can you see that, Lisa?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to write a couple of notes down. Thank you. Thank you. I'm all set. Thanks.
I'm curious myself, is if around that availability of the members to participate is a new phenomenon due to the busyness of COVID, or is it kind of always been that way? And someone, Terry, are you unmuting?
Yes, from what I've heard from our school sector reps, they are so overwhelmed with mental health issues. They are emotionally drained. School staff are walking the halls in tears because of the pressure that they're facing. And it's just kind of exploded with the virtual learning and their responsibilities and what is expected of them. School staff are getting like no time during the day to have any downtime. And also what I'm hearing is that there's great inconsistency with anticipated scheduling. On a Friday or Thursday, they're told that, virtual learning will continue ongoing. And then on Friday, they'll hear they're going to be in the classroom on Monday. And it's just this emotional turmoil that both counselors and teachers are experiencing that has never been the case prior to our current situation.
And I would add to that, if they're also trying to support their own children in their schooling along with teaching. I've heard that's a huge issue, especially with younger children. So absolutely. So one of the things we talk about is, is there a way the coalition can provide some support, connect them with mental health, either resources or suggestions, or I'm not sure if Margaret is still with us or Kathy, but I know down in Lower Fairfield County, they were looking at a support group for teachers, starting up a support group for educators, a virtual support group where they could, talk about these issues. I know in some coalitions, they had an issue prior to COVID, is where the teachers or educators might come to the meeting, but not take on, and provide advice or feedback, but not take on a more active role in doing things. And one of the issues is, well, what is it are we asking them to do? Are we giving them some meaningful roles, like with the ABC classroom, or with teaching a curriculum, or advising a student group, or what exactly are we asking them to do? Have we asked them specifically to do something? And I want to note that both of especially with the ABC classroom, it's not more content to teach, it's sort of changing the way we act with kids, and the climate that kids are in. I didn't want to steal the floor. I don't know if other people have suggestions or comments on this issue.
Jay, I see we have maybe a question or two and maybe a comment. Do you want to share those with the group?
Get out of that. So I see that Mark is saying, any insight from Terry or Michael, who work closely with schools, or any insights from Ty. Michael also says we are doing virtual town halls for teachers in New Haven.
Can Michael talk a little bit more about that? Would you be willing to, Michael?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So at the start of the pandemic, we realized that we needed to support our frontline workers. We started in the Yale Health System with nurses, doctors, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants that were working on COVID units. And then we drilled down to different hospitals and different departments that had reached out to us for additional town hall offerings that we could provide. So they're essentially set up with a pair of psychologists and psychiatrists who will talk about the stress response that people experience in times of trauma. We're identifying this pandemic as a traumatic event, and we'll walk through that model. We'll ask people to share different types of stressors that they're experiencing, and then it's really groups of people who are on the call that are sharing their various strategies for how they're coping with these stressors. So we expanded that model to the public schools in New Haven, and it's working out great. We have some schools that are 100% virtual and some schools that are hybrid. So the challenges are different for the different teachers that we speak to. You know, some are still very stressed about transitioning back into the building. Some are already in the building and need to handle the challenge of delivering instruction remotely on some days and in person on others. So I think anytime that you could bring a group of folks together and they can talk out loud about what they're experiencing, the main thing that you're doing is you're normalizing those stressors among the individuals that are there to talk about it. And then somehow the strategies just organically flow from people for how to cope. And the amazing thing we're seeing is that people are so resilient. People are adapting. You know, it's not so much that people have the fear that they're going to get sick as much as they have this fear of letting go of this balance that they've attained from being able to work remotely and from being able to spend more time with their families and from being able to see their loved ones more. So that's actually the direction that we're moving in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Michael and Terry, as well. We know that our teachers and our schools are really going through a lot. And I'd agree with Lisa that, you know, just maintaining that communication and keeping everyone abreast of what's going on and just offering that support. I know that we had done that earlier in the pandemic with our superintendent, and being a real source of rich data for them, at least to launch from as they moved forward, was helpful and well received. So, okay, thanks so much for everyone for sharing. Just going to be starting to wrap up soon, but we didn't want to leave you with just the barriers part of this, but rather some ideas. So this will be available to you when you receive the presentation in an email and on our website, but just two buckets kind of here is for those who aren't really engaging at all with the school sector, some initial ideas on how to reach out to them and connect, and some initial invitations to participate in the prevention efforts. And for those that are already engaged in the school sector and would like to increase that level of engagement, we also provide some ideas and tips on how to do that. And that really is a lot about communication, extending those invitations, trying to have those face-to-face or now virtual meetings, making sure you have your key players in your community involved, people who make decisions, policymakers, and just asking PTAs or representatives to share your social norms campaign or the messaging or your events. And just a lot of communication at this time, I know is challenging and has been helpful. So just with our last, well, we have, oops, sorry. We have one more poll. We have about 15 minutes, so I won't spend too much on it, but we just wanted to see if you could think about your community, your organization, just one or two ideas that you might think that where you could either increase or launch connection with the school sector. So just, it's a multiple choice question again. And if you think about these ideas, what are one or two areas that you can think of right now that you might be able to utilize back in your community or your organization or coalition to increase that participation? Okay, just about done. All right. And here are our results. So it looks like all of them got some attention. Maintaining those relationships, yep, like I said, staying informed, keeping everyone informed, meeting face-to-face, talking about our shared goals, how we can help each other out, extending personal invitations. All right, thank you so much for sharing with that. All right. All right, Shay, just one quick check-in right now before I move on to the last segment of the presentation. Anything in the chat box we should know about or address right now? Shay? don't see anything, so I'm going to move on. So now we're going to share with you some resources and tools really quickly before we sign off for today. And we just wanted to give a shout out to our RBHAOs. For those who don't know, our Regional Behavioral Health Action Organizations, our partners. We provided a map here for everyone to show you which area or which RBHAO your community rests in. And on this slide, when you receive it, each of these logos, we do provide the website, but if you also click on them, that will take you right to their website. And of course, they will be able to provide you with even more resources, information, substance prevention efforts going on in your region, as well as just within your community. So those are our really good partners over there. That is another resource for everyone to reach out to as a source of information. And then next is the first tool that we're also providing today is this levels of collaboration scale. Some of you may have participated in that Coalition Vitality Assessment tool where you were assessing the domains of the collaboration and the work of the coalition. This is just a brief one-pager we thought might be helpful for some people to be able to do in a leadership meeting or in a coalition meeting, to just take stock of how all of our stakeholders and our members are feeling about engaging the school sector, just with some ideas as well on how to improve their participation. These are the two charts I mentioned earlier around building in that cultural competency within each step of the SPF, and also how the SPF contributes to sustainability. So these are small. We did want to put them in the presentation just so you have them, but they are going to be standalone resources for you on our website. So they'll be both in the presentation if you choose to use it yourself, and feel free to do so, or you can print them out as standalone documents. And the next one is, as we go through each of the 12 sectors, we created a chart across some of our more evidence-based strategies that we see a lot of coalitions utilizing. So youth engagement, enforcement activities, social norms campaigns, and coalition capacity building. And so for each sector, we're going to have a chart with just a bunch of ideas from our lived experiences and shared experiences in here. And it's by no means an exhaustive list by any means. And we would welcome anyone's ideas on how to add more items to this, of course, anytime. But just know that we have the school sector here across our evidence-based strategies, and we will continue to do that for every sector that we go through in the series. And just for our last poll, we're just going to reach out to everyone and say, if you're on the call and you work in evidence-based strategies, which of these evidence-based strategies does your coalition engage schools in? That's going to be our last poll for today. Hold on. Okay, so here are our results. Youth engagement is the top of the ticket here. Capacity building, social norms campaigns, and enforcement. Reason why we want to put this in is just with everyone on the call and being so spread out and we're virtual now, I think it'd be really helpful to know that there are people working in different areas. So maybe you're not necessarily working in enforcement or necessarily have launched your own social norms campaign, but know that there are others on here and in our state that have done so. So just building that network between each other to share information or ideas. So it's just an idea to just poll everyone on that so that we all know that all of these strategies are being utilized, and we can always reach out to each other or to T-Task for technical assistance on any of those evidence-based strategies. And then we're just going to wrap up. So just how to access the tools in this presentation is that they are on our website. So that's preventiontrainingcenter.org. So those will be available for you on the website, but we will also follow up with everyone that registered with an email so that you have this information, and also just from any information that we can share from our fabulous guest speakers today, we will be sure to include that for you as well. Shay is going to be putting a feedback link into the chat box We'll be sure to put that into the email as well. And since this is our first one, we just would love to hear from you. It literally is 60 seconds or less survey form or just a feedback form just to see how we can improve or what you thought and if it was helpful. A quick save the date for you is that our next sector community learning is on November 10th. And we're going to be talking with guest speakers about the youth sector. And just to save the date for that, thought that the youth sector would be just a natural progression to move forwards with after the school sector. And I think Ken is going to be sharing a few other save the dates. Ken, yes? You're on mute, Ken.
Yep, I just have one other save the date announcement. Just bear with me one more second here. So for some reason, I'm having technical difficulties sharing my screen here, but the other event is for November 13th, and that is a lunch and learn event from 12 o'clock to 1:30. And we'll be having a prevention expert, Dr. Jason Kilmer will be the presenter on that. And I'll be sending, TTask will be sending flyers for these events within the next week or two. So stay tuned for those.
Thanks, Ken. Are you going to stop?
I just wanted to add, I've heard Dr. Kilmer twice, and he's a very engaging speaker. I've heard him at the National Prevention Network conferences, and he's really a very good speaker, entertaining, but also giving you good prevention information as well. I am going to ask folks if they would consider sending us, either putting it in the chat box or sending us a quick email or a phone call to add to our inventory of school community partnerships, collaborations. If you're doing something interesting or innovative or successful, or you're trying something new, can you let us know? Because we would be happy to either feature you in a future newsletter or website, as well as just add you to our cadre of experienced professionals that we network with, you know, in terms of directing people who may be interested in doing something that's similar to what you're doing. So if you wouldn't mind reaching out and sharing with us, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay.
I wanted to thank our speakers. Nice job. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just about to wrap up. So again, just Steve and Kelly and Shaylin, thank you so much for sharing your experience today. We'll be sure to share out your information in our email follow-up to everyone. And just thank you for sharing your morning with us today. It's our first inaugural one, so I hope you'll provide us with some good feedback going forward and join us in our next school sector, which will be highlighting youth work in each of our coalitions. So enjoy the rest of this rainy day. I don't know if it's raining where you are, but it's raining where I am. And thank you so much for coming and sharing your input and your experience and engaging this sector going forward. And we'll look forward to the next one. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.